I know, you gotta go with bubbles.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Poor Taste, an irreverent guide to drinking wine. If that music didn't cue you up for the irreverent aspect, I don't know what will.
I know what will. Drinking.
That's right.
That's what cues me up for irreverency all the time.
So, Britt, what are we doing here aside from drinking?
Aside from drinking, well, we're making drinking wine accessible to everyone. We want to demystify wine for everyone who's felt like it's above their pay grade. It's not. And we want to be here to help lead you along this journey. We're learning, you're learning, and we got to do it together. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool. The last few weeks, we've been getting a lot of feedback from people saying, I just don't know anything about wine, so I don't know if I can do it, or I don't know if I'm your audience. I'm like, no, you're exactly our audience. Thanks for being
literally our audience. Actually, Corey was talking before. Corey, our lovely, lovely producer. He was talking. There we go. He was talking to someone before the show started about like, oh, you should tune in. And they were like, oh, I don't know. I don't really like Riesling's too sweet for me or something like that. And it's like, well, you should definitely tune in because we get to talk all about that. And we kind of got to demystify things that we've always held as truths that maybe aren't.
Yeah, which is kind of a perfect segue into our topic for today. But before we get there, we have a really important segment called Faults and Flaws. And we've been asking you for weeks to send us anything that we've been messing up on, anything you want us to correct. And you haven't been sending us stuff. And I know it's not because we know everything, but send us some stuff if you want us to correct it. In the meantime, I wanted to make a correction for myself because last week I was trying to remember a synonym for Pinot Noir. And I said that it was Blaufränkisch, or I thought it was Blaufränkisch, but it's Blauburgunder. So, right? Am I right? Or am I still messing up?
No, you're right. The funny thing is, it's like, already wine can be confusing. So Blaufränkisch, a German word for Blaufränkisch is Lemberger, and then Blauburgunder. It's like, my God.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. So forgive me if you remembered that fact and you told it to all your friends. Now you got to go back and tell them you were wrong. Pinot Noir actually synonymous with Blauburgunder. So that's my correction from last week. So what are we talking about today?
Oh my gosh, I think we've alluded to it just a little bit, but German wines, das gut, yes? So I hope that you brought your lederhosen to like strap on and get ready to learn all about German wines and get to love them like we do.
Yes.
Okay, so then let's start drinking.
Yes, this is the part of the show where we tell you to open your wine. If you haven't already opened it, get yourself some wine.
Oh my gosh, like, I'm so embarrassed. I don't have my wine with me. Give me 1 second, everybody. I'm so sorry.
Where's your wine? Oh, should I scoot over a little
Oh my goodness. Thank goodness. Here's my wine.
Wow. Where did you come from?
I really needed a drink because I was so nervous starting in the other room. I never sit in there.
So we have a little surprise for you because Britt and I are together, clearly. I had to travel up north for something else, and so I decided to hang out at her house for a few days. So here we are, live from Britt's couch, the two of us together. Cheers!
Cheers!
Oh, what is the German cheers?
Prost!
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 Prost! So
okay, so what are you drinking? Tell me all about it.
Okay, so I am drinking a Pinot Noir, which, if you tuned in last week, you probably remember that our whole topic was about Pinot Noir. So here Corey is putting up a screen for you so you can see what it looks like.
And I don't know if you guys can hear this, but I feel like I can kind of hear the room I just left. So
are you talking in the other room?
Fix that. It sounds like we're talking in the other room still.
So let me tell you about this wine. So this one is a Pinot Noir, as I mentioned, which the German term for is Spätburgunder. So we have a Spätburgunder. We also, it is 2017 Pinot, and we're going to learn a lot more today about the different ways of designating different wines throughout Germany. But the cool thing about this one is well, you're going to hear about all the things that it tastes like later, but it's from the Rhine Hessen, which is a region in Germany, and making a lot of different types of wine there. Germany is the third largest producer of Pinot Noir, which we told you about last week. So I think that's, if you remember that, you might not be surprised to see a Pinot Noir come from Germany. The winemaker for this particular wine, one of his ideas or one of his theories is that a great wine is created in the vineyard, not in the cellar. So I know we've talked about that before, where we really love wines that you can tell the difference of just because they're coming from the land, they're being cultivated in such a caring way, and they're not necessarily manipulated a lot in the actual winery. So that's this winemaker's theory on that. There's a tiny bit of oak in this, but again, this same winemaker really doesn't like to use a lot of oak because he wants to let the wines come through and really show the terroir and the characteristics of that particular land. So that's what I'm drinking today. It's delicious. Can't wait to share it with you later.
I know. This is like the first time that I actually get to try her wine. So I'm so stoked on that. And I'm just going to like talk about the elephant in the room. It's really hard to do this with her and not look at her. And I'm looking at you guys and I'm like, okay. But this time when I point at her, I'm actually pointing at her, which is usually I point the other direction and it points at her. So anyway, that's something new and exciting that we get to experience today. Well, let me tell you about my wine.
Please do.
Okay. So my wine, maybe we have a picture of it. We definitely have a picture of it. But it is a Riesling from the Mosel. There it is.
So red and white.
Yeah, it's red and white. We get full spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from Image Batcherberg. Kind of a cool story about this one. If you can see that picture down there that's all zoomed in, there's like these little kids who it's two bottles of wine, but the bottles kind of look like they're also a cannon. And the person, this is like a super old vineyard, but when the guy was first starting this specific vineyard, he didn't have enough land to cultivate. And so it was this huge cliffside that he like blew up just so that he could get more land. And he used it literally. I know Batterberg means like demolition hill. So really exciting. And maybe when you think about German wines, maybe you think about all of like the slate and the stuff. And so just imagine blowing up a cliff and then planting vineyards on that like site. Talk about having like, you know, the perfect terroir for growing some wine.
Create your own.
And what's cool about this one, this one is a blend of all of his top cru sites. It's probably the ones that didn't make it into the single planting. So it's like, okay, you're picking the best wine from each vineyard. But when it's not the best, like let's put it all together and make it really reasonably priced and have this really exciting thing. It is a 2016, so it's got a little bit of age on it, which I don't know if you could see. I'll like kind of move so it goes by this white.
Oh,
here, I'll put this behind it. It's super yellow, like. And you see that a lot on Rieslings that have a little bit more age. So this one has about 4 years of age on it, which I'm like so excited that this is like at the wine shop right now, which usually, okay. What's terroir? Well, spelled wrong.
Okay. No, yeah, that's a good one. So terroir, if I didn't explain myself.
It was me who said it.
Oh, you did just now?
I just now said it.
I was thinking, when did I?
It was me. Okay. Terroir is like land. It literally means like kind of what makes up the land. And you can, there's certain land that's better for certain vines.
And so that sometimes when people say, what's the terroir on this? What is it? Like you can smell kind of where it's grown, What else do you have to say about that?
Well, it's kind of just like what I was saying in the intro with this winemaker that I have my wine from. His big thing is really getting the terroir to express itself through the wine. And what that means is kind of like what Britt was saying, you really want the nuances. I was reading another article today and they were saying that most people think that the variety of the wine is what determines the flavors, but really it's more about the terroir of the land that determines the flavors of the wine. So yes, variety plays plays a part, but you get different land and different soils. I mean, you can smell, it's like, think about going to the ocean and then the forest and then going to a farm, and you get different smells and different things in the land, and different wines pick those things up. And so that's what terroir is.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
And also like terroir, like other than just like soil and land, it also has to do with like weather, like kind of like we talked on a previous episode about Australia and how they tend to have like a menthol eucalyptus taste to it. And it's because of the trees that are grown there, and the oils kind of get on the skins of the grapes. And that also is part of the terroir, part of what adds to kind of what comes out in the glass. And so that is what terroir is. Thank you, Mikey, for asking that wonderful question. Really appreciate you. Yeah. Just to finish about this wine, it is really super old grapes.
This I like.
I like that too. Super old vines, 60 plus years. They are pre-phylloxera. Phylloxera is a little louse, a little bug that killed a lot of vines. And so when you find like vines that are pre-phylloxera, that's like pretty rare, especially like I was reading in the Mosel where this is from. It was quite rare that you can find them like that.
I have a question for you. Why would you want old vines?
Okay. So, man, this is so great being together. I'm just going to tell you that. Like,
don't get used to it, though.
No, it's not happening like again. But
well, hopefully again sometime.
But anyway, so what's really great about old vines, thank you for keeping me on track.
Gotcha.
Is that think about as you get older. Do you think that you're a little wiser? Do you think that you're a little bit more refined? The older I get, I think the better I get. And that's how I feel about wine. So the older a vine gets, the deeper down the roots are going to go. They're going to go further and further down looking for that water. And because of that, they're going to have much more character to their wines. And also like, not only that, but like when vines are really young, they produce a lot of grapes. Yeah. And the grapes aren't that good. Think about like the stuff you were doing when you were young. Maybe not stuff that you want to put on your like fridge right now, or like stuff that you probably didn't tell your parents you were doing. Me. And now you're like much more like, I'm like, oh, I'm proud of the stuff I'm doing. Just think about that when you think about vines. What do you have to say for old vines versus young vines?
Yeah, I was thinking that it seems counterintuitive, but you really want to have vines that have to work very hard to produce fruit, because the harder they have to work, like she said, when they're digging really, really deep to get to water, they're working harder and they're producing a higher quality fruit and less of it. So that means on your first few years of the vine growth and the grapes, you might have a bunch, so much fruit, like pounds and pounds and pounds of fruit, but it might be kind of watery, like the kind of grapes that you get from the store when you go buy grapes, where it's like good if you eat them, but they're not really good quality to make wine out of. But as the vines get older and as they work harder and harder, they cut down on how much fruit they produce, and the fruit that they do produce is higher quality. So if you've had fruit trees or anything like that, it's the same general idea. The fruit trees get better as they get older, but they also get less prolific in the amount of fruit they produce.
Yeah. So, well, let's just finish this one real quick so that we can move on to all this educational stuff that is not even we're going to talk about. This is done organically. It is natural yeast, natural ambient yeast. There's a very small amount of sulfur added right before bottling, so it's pretty natural. And the winemaker, his name is Gernot Nolman. So I'm really liking it. So cool. Where do we go from here?
Okay, so now that you know what we're drinking, and we can't wait to hear what you're drinking, hopefully you'll share some of those photos with us.
Yeah, put it in the comments. Send it to our Instagram. We want to know what you're drinking.
Yes.
We wish we were drinking it too.
Oh, cool. Another Mosel, Germany. Cool. Great.
Nice.
Fun. Yeah, we've gotten some really cool photos today of people's posts of what they're drinking, and I'm just so excited. I wish I could be in all your living rooms drinking all those different Rieslings. Oh, Lauren, I think, is on her bottle number 2, it sounds like.
I know, she had the first one and now a second one.
Oh, cool. Oh, Sylvaner, great.
Oh, I do love that. I mean, Riesling is like the easiest one to find.
Wait, don't give away too much.
But, you know, when I see some people bring other ones, I'm like, hey,
yeah,
special ones.
Yeah. Okay. So now what we have planned for you is we have 4 different parts of how we broke up Germany, so we can give you a Spark Notes version of Germany. Obviously, it's an entire country, and I think I took like an 8-week class on just Germany, so we're going to get that in depth. If you want more information, feel free to ask us questions, but we're going to talk to you about what grapes are grown there. We're going to talk to you about how to read a German wine label so that if you had trouble when you were going to pick out this wine and you're like, what the heck is this wine? We can help you with that. We're going to talk to you about some of the climate and what makes the grapes kind of turn out the way they do. And then we're going to talk to you about the Predikat system, which is kind of their structuring of different styles of wine. So Britt's going to cover that. So first of all, what is grown in Germany? We've seen, I have a Pinot Noir, Britt has a Riesling. Those are 2 of the most common.
Someone else is drinking Sylvaner.
Sylvaner, yes. So actually, interestingly enough, the majority, well, you probably guessed this, but the majority of wines that are grown in Germany, about 70% of them are white wines. So
I know, look at that, like that little tiny red dot on that circle.
But even that is for, that's even a red,
oh.
These are all whites.
Okay, got it. Never mind.
So if this breaks it down, you can see the most popular ones. Riesling is by far, well, Riesling's most popular, followed by Müller-Thurgau, which is actually a cross of Riesling and a wine grape called Madeleine Royale, which I have never heard of before, except for in this context. So don't feel bad if you didn't see that on your Germany wine shop shelf.
But it will be on the test later today.
Yeah, study up. Sylvaner is on there. Grauburgunder and Weissburgunder, Pinot Blanc and Pinot Gris are grown there. Those are kind of the main ones that you start to see. And then you get into some really, really obscure things that are basically impossible to find in the States. So don't feel bad, again, if you didn't find those. Also, Chardonnay, I wanted to mention, is grown in Germany as well. And the primary reason for Chardonnay being grown in Germany is that it used to make German sparkling wine. So the Germans call their sparkling wine Sekt, S-E-K-T, like
Sek it to me.
Yeah, I think there's a hashtag that says Sekt sells, which I always think is pretty funny.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So if you're wondering, if you're ever looking at a German bottle and it says Sekt, it means sparkling. So that's kind of a little bit of interesting information. So 65% of the wines grown are white wines. And then the remainder of them there's some rosé sprinkled in there, but there's also a bunch of reds that are grown there. I was reading an article today from Wine Folly. I'll cite my sources. I'm pretty sure it was her. She said, red wine in the summer is usually about as palatable as warm mayonnaise. And I was like, okay, yes, if it's hot where you're at and you're thinking, gosh, I don't want to drink red wine.
Warm mayonnaise is disgusting.
Yeah, I know. I think that's
in
the
case
point.
you're wondering, the PSA from Corey, warm mayonnaise is disgusting. It makes me think of, Anchorman when he was like, oh, milk was a bad choice. Like, when it's like, that's how I feel. Like, I don't want hot milk. I don't want warm mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want red wine in the summer, but maybe I do.
Well, maybe you do if you know about the German red wines. The article is talking about how not only does it seem gross to drink red wine in the summer sometimes, but if you really love red wine and you still want to, then you don't want to have to drink by yourself in your closet with like the air conditioning on you. So to prevent you from having to do that, German red wines are a delicious alternative to other bigger, higher alcohol wines. So German wines are very light. Let's see that cloth, Britt. Let's see if we can see.
Oh.
It's a little hard to see from here.
I know. Don't pour it on me.
I know. Try not to pour it on you. It's a little hard to see, but if you have a German Pinot or you have a German red, you can probably see that it's pretty light. They make really nice chillable reds, so you can put them in the fridge for a little while, and then it's much easier to drink it than warm mayonnaise.
Literally, chillable reds are my favorite drink.
They're the best.
Like, I could drink a chillable red every day.
Yeah. If you think that there's some stigma about putting your reds in the fridge, there is a little bit, but
don't put an ice cube. Putting it in the fridge for a little bit's okay.
But you know what? There are some wines that can be improved with an ice cube.
Oh, that it's called sangria at that point.
Yeah, ice cube and an orange slice, and then
maybe some alcohol.
Yeah. So a couple of the red wines that are grown, obviously Pinot Noir / Spätburgunder, because that's what they call it. The German language is so fun. It's these long words, but they're actually pretty easy to say.
Oh my gosh. They have like some of the best words for things.
It's great.
Like there's this word called Schatzenpaka, which means he who parks in the shade, which is really just to call people sissies. But I park in the shade and I do not think I'm a sissy.
There you have it. She's
Like,
not a sissy.
They have words for everything.
Yeah, it's great. So don't be freaked out next time you see the word Spätburgunder. You know it's a German Pinot. Dornfelder is another common red wine. It's actually the most commonly grown red wine in Germany, which is mostly used as a blending grape, but occasionally you can find a single variety Dornfelder.
Do you see it anywhere outside of Germany?
Yeah, sometimes you can find them in the States.
Okay.
But they're
I mean like grown.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
Probably Austria, because that's like mini Germany.
Yeah. There's probably some places like somebody's backyard in some country where they decide to grow some obscure grape. I'm sure it's being grown. But yeah, it doesn't really have too much of a following yet. I think that's kind of up and coming. Trollinger, which I love. It's like a light, fresh style, which if I see those, I mean, some of you all know if you drink wine with me, I drink a lot of Trollinger. And then Lemberger is another one.
Which is also
Blaufränkisch. So if you're confused, don't worry about it. All you need to know is that German wines are delicious. Their white wines are primarily dry. They're most commonly grown there, but the red wines are also primarily dry. I was reading that 70% of German wine production is dry wines.
Which is
70.
like blows my mind, honestly. Yes, because you think about like what German is known for, and you don't like, you think like even the person that Corey talked to today was like, nope, don't like sweet wines, not going to tune in.
Yeah. Do you want to know how that happened?
Yes, I do.
Well, I'm sure there are much more complicated factors at play, but if you've ever heard of Blue Nun, which I think I have a label on, when I was learning about German Riesling or German wines in general, people kept referring to Blue Nun wines. And basically they were a wine that was mass produced to, if you're catching on a theme, it seems like we talk a lot about mass produced wines that gave these countries bad reputations, but Germany got a bad reputation for mass produced, pretty sweet white wines, and they were called Blue Nun, and they were pretty old. They're like, I think from like the 60s and 70s. They're still being made today. The website was like nice and hip looking, but it also, I'm not sure if it's completely recovered from the bad stigma of just sweet wine that was syrupy. I love sweet wines, by the way. So I only love them if they're done really nicely with a nice acidity. And these ones, from what I understand, were not done that well. So they gave Germany a bad name.
We should get a bottle.
We should.
I'm just taste it for like educational purposes.
Educational purposes.
Always.
Yeah. So that's how Germany kind of got a bad reputation for having overly sweet wines.
And what was interesting, because I went down this like deep dive of my wine, and I was even reading about kind of his choices behind why he makes his wines. And he was talking about like the sweet wines and how it was really the market really dictated that. And so people were like, their palates were like, no, we want the sweeter wines. Like dry wine wasn't really a thing. And so Germany actually changed their production from sweet wines or from dry wines to sweet wines. Now they're kind of moving back. So it's interesting to watch these patterns as they change in the world and everything, and how, you know.
Also, Germany makes world-class dessert wines. So if you are looking for, and I know some of you out there, shout out to Angie and Shadow, are drinking some wines that might have some sweetness to them.
And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that a little later.
Britt's
so
got
I can't
all
wait to
the
hear
info.
about it. But now that we know kind of the varieties that you're seeing in the wines, let's talk about how to read a label. So I have a little prop for this. It is our lovely label generator.
You all have props too, because you have your own bottle.
Yeah, so everyone look at your own bottle. My bottle doesn't really fit that, but the label is going to come up, the Dr. Lucen label, so we can go over it together and look at kind of the different components to a wine label. But I mean, already it's a weird language, so like it's hard to know kind of how to read the labels. So let's talk about it, because the best way to start drinking wine is to know what you're buying. So we're looking at this label right now, and the things that I'm seeing, the Dr. Lucen at the top, that's going to be the producer, so the person who's making the wine. 2018 is the vintage. I think that you guys can probably identify where the variety is. It's the Riesling on it, but there's a word right behind it that's kind of maybe not as familiar to everyone. It's called Cabernet. On every label, there'll be a designation. Sometimes there will be, depending on what it is, but a designation as to how ripe it was when they picked the grape. Now, this does not mean that it's going to be sweet. Like the riper it is, it does sometimes correlate. But what can happen is when you pick the grape and it has a lot of sugar in it, you can ferment it so that all that sugar turns into alcohol and then it's dry and then it's not sweet anymore. It just depends on, like, if you don't want to go all the way dry, then you stop the fermentation and you bottle it that way with something. And people refer to this, like, for the longest time, people would refer to this when I was like a little baby wine drinker before I was 21, like I just turned, or like I'm turning later this week.
They don't know that yet.
People would talk about RS, and I'm like, what is RS? Which it stands for residual sugar. So if there is RS in your wine, it's a sweet wine because it has residual sugar. That's not going to show on the label. I'm just telling you for your own knowledge. So the ripeness category is how ripe it was when it was picked. But a cool indication, like, okay, so this is a Cabernet, and it was a certain ripeness when they picked the grapes. However, they could have fermented it dry. A little cheat sheet in case you're looking at a German wine bottle and you're like, I don't know if this is dry. I don't know if it's sweet. Look at the alcohol percentage. So everyone look at your own bottle. I'm going to use this lovely example on the blackboard. It says 9%. My guess is that Cabernet is not fermented dry. I bet there is RS, which we all now know, residual sugar in that bottle. What's yours? What's your percentage, Kaitlin?
Mine is 12.5.
So I'm going to guess hers is dry. Another word for dry, maybe you see it on your bottle, is trocken.
I don't see it on my bottle.
I know. Honestly, we had a bottle like yesterday too, because she's here. And of course, who am I going to drink with? And that one didn't even say trocken on it. But mine is 11%. And mine's a Riesling. So I'm going to guess it's dry. I'm not going to guess. I know it is because I'm drinking it right now. So that's just like a little cheat sheet. If you are like, you can't read anything on the label, look at the percentage. If it's a really low percentage, it probably still has some residual sugar in there.
Yes, that's a good measure. So if it's like in the 11, 12 range, it's probably dry. If it's getting down to like 9, like this one is, then yeah, that's probably a pretty sweet one.
Other things that you'll find on the label? That's a great question. Why are they doctors?
I used to know the answer to this, but I
actually meant to look it up, but they're all doctors. I think it actually has to do with they have PhDs in like winemaking, also known as enology, and so they are all doctors. And it's so funny because I would like to be a doctor of wine. I am a doctor of wine. I'm like, how many
You're
years?
a doctor?
I feel like how many years do you need to be a doctor? Like
a lot. It depends.
But I'm talking like when you're studying, like probably 7 to 8 years. Okay, I am gonna be 33. I've been drinking wine for how long? Maybe I have gotten my doctorship.
Maybe we all have.
I know. Or maybe you're just starting your course in getting your doctoral degree.
Wherever you are along the pathway is fine.
Yes. Maybe you're not like Dr. Lucen here, who's been doing it for years and years. Other things that you're going to see on there are the village indication as well as the vineyard. And I was reading this thing. It was like, the part that you probably can't pronounce is the village and vineyard. So on this one, it's Utziger is the village and Wirtsgarten is vineyard. So that's just some kind of stuff to look for on your bottles. Also, if you look on there, it talks about where it's coming from. It's coming from the Mosel. This bottle, where's yours from, Kaitlin?
Mine is from the Rheinhessen.
Rheinhessen. Mine is also from the Mosel. So like, there's just certain things that you want to start looking for on. Yeah, I love this. Let's point them out. That you want to start looking for on your bottles that will just help you recognize them so that you can like buy stuff that you like. Germany's really interesting because they are so like, they want to give you the most information possible. Like all of them are even numbered. Like, and the numbers correlate to like where it was grown, who was the inspector who inspected, how much like how ripe it was and all these things. It's like all of these things are coming into like they're really like want you to know what you're getting. Other things that you might see on the label, the predicate's fine. That is the quality level. Another way to kind of see quality level. Kaitlin, we have a lovely bottle here to show us.
Oh, yes.
Let's get it. Maybe we'll get it a little closer.
There we go. Can you see that little emblem?
I'll try to like block the light.
So it's an eagle with with a grape cluster.
And it says VDP on it. So what VDP stands for is like
Weinguten Dots Qualitas. I don't know. I can't remember.
It's something like that. But what it is it's a German association of quality and predicate wines. And there are about 200 wineries that fall into this category. And it is a voluntary thing that they join. Obviously, they're held to a much higher standard than even the German like laws require. So because they follow that higher standard, like if you see that little eagle on there, you are probably getting a quality wine because they have to stick to this standard. A couple other things that you might see on your label, and then we'll move on to the next subject, is Großlage, which indicates the best vineyard sites in Germany. And if you want to think about it, when you think about like France, it's kind of like Grand Cru. So when you're thinking about what Grand Cru is, think Großlage is what it's like in Germany. There's Esslage, which they call first class vineyards. It's like just one step below Großlage. And that one is kind of like Premier Cru. When you think about Premier in France, like it's not Grand Cru, it's Premier Cru, but it's still great. And then if you see something that says Großgewürz, which sometimes it's indicated by a G and a GG, it is coming from those Grand Cru sites that we talked about, except it's a dry wine from those Grand Cru sites. So it's called the GG. So now, Kaitlin, why don't you tell us, now that we know how to read a label, let's talk about what is in that bottle.
Yeah, so you should definitely not be intimidated by German wines, despite the amount of information that we're giving you about them. They look scarier than they are.
Well, they just want you to know everything, and sometimes you don't want to know everything. It's like, okay, just tell me what's the good wine.
Well, interestingly enough, too, we were talking about how different our bottles were from like traditional ones. And mine, actually, my producer, I was reading that they did on purpose. They worked with the importer to the States to try to make it like a really accessible wine label. So it just says, it looks more like a California label or something. It just says the producer, Gutzler, Pinot Noir, and they actually use the word dry, which is kind of uncommon.
And they even use Pinot Noir. They didn't say
they use Pinot Noir. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is definitely for like a US audience. It's not for a German audience. And then they do say that it's got the VDP on it, which is like the little marker that she was talking about with the upside down. So it's not like a hard and fast rule that every bottle you find that's German is going to have those characteristics, but it's just nice to know.
Oh, even my bottle, it's like hipster bottle.
Yeah.
Like I would not even think this is coming from Germany. I'll be quite honest. I'm like, really? Like Germany's have doctors on them. Just ask Logan.
Well, yeah.
And you're just like, wait, what? This is German? No, it's a hipster wine bottle, but it's lovely. And there you go.
Oh yeah.
Quality's fine.
Well, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, it's kind of fun just to get to dig in, and then you get to try to pronounce a bunch of strange German words.
And I think it's fun because we all get to look at our own bottles right now and like kind of learn a little bit. It's like, oh, what does mine say? Where's mine from? Oh, I had no idea. That was the Village.
Yes. Yes, we can tell you about sulfites, which kind of, yes, I'm going to be talking about something that will touch on that subject. So a couple things about the German area. So where wines are grown. I think we have a map of Germany to kind of give you an idea of where the vineyard. Oh yeah. So yes, here we go. So here's a map of Germany. It's kind of the bottom part of Germany. And every colored area is an area where a different wine region is set up. The wine regions of Germany are called Anbaugebiets. But if you don't want to remember that, then you can just call them wine regions, which is much easier. And there are 13 Anbaugebiets and 13 different wine growing regions throughout Germany. They make a variety of different wines. I'm not going to go into all of them here today because we don't have that much time. But I do want to give you just the idea that in general, the German climate is a very cool climate. So if you remember last week, we talked about Pinot Noir and how Pinot Noir likes to be grown in cool climates, which is it is the reason why Germany makes so much Pinot Noir, because it's a cool climate grape. And everything that they grow there is pretty much a cool climate grape. What you have in Germany is what you get with the wines, because of that cool climate, is sort of a sharp, laser-focused, tart acidity, like that mouth-watering feel that you get. That's why they make them such good summer drinking wines too, because they're not like flabby and heavy and high alcohol. They're like bright and fresh and zippy with that acidity. So that has to do with the cool climate aspect. Also, I think we do have some photos of some of the actual vineyards. I think they're actually photos that Britt took from her trip. Britt, what's in the middle of that island?
Oh my goodness. Well, let me just tell you, this is the Mosel River, which maybe some of you are drinking from, but in the middle of that island is where I camped, like in a Volkswagen. Like, how German am I? So I went to a Volkswagen meetup in the middle of the Mosel River, and there it is.
Yeah, so it's super cool. The reason why we're showing you these is because that's a great story, but also because in Germany, they have a really unique situation where, because it's cold climate, and if you know anything about growing grapes or fruit or plants or anything, a lot of them grow better with sunlight, with warmth. And so what ends up happening is we have a lot of the slopes being very, very, very steep. So you see this slope on the left-hand side where I remember when I was in Germany, I took like a little, not a gondola, but kind of like on a little wire up in the vineyards, and it was almost straight up the vineyards. And I was watching people thinking, oh my gosh, if they're working the vineyards and they make one wrong step, they are actually going to fall like all the way down to the river. So they slant upward and they're very steep. The reason for that is because a couple things. So if you're built on the river like that, you get to take advantage of the cooling effect that the river has on the land and the vineyards. But then also, if you're built on the vineyard or on the slant like that, you also get the maximum amount of sunlight every single day. So they plant their vineyards very steeply so that they can maximize the amount of sun so that they can actually ripen their grapes. In the class that I took about German wine, we talked a little bit about that same kind of thing that you were like, oh my gosh, you could die so easily. The instructor was saying, like, in Germany, because people don't appreciate German wines nearly as much as they should. So I hope we've all changed that already, but maybe we haven't, and we're going to get you there by the end. But she was like, the instructor was talking about how, like, every year, like German winemakers, there's a pretty big number that die. Oh, really?
Yeah. And they were like, sometimes it's because they're just like, they put their whole life into this and no one's like buying their wines and they've gone bankrupt and maybe they kill themselves.
Oh, no, really?
But then she was also like, and because of those steep cliffs, and it's done, like, most of the soil is going to be slate, like blue slate and gray slate. They slide down those hills, and you have to be so careful of them. I've seen them where they've tied like ropes around them while they're working on the vineyards, just so that, like, if they do slip, I mean, because it really is like a straight shot straight down the vineyard. So that's a really interesting component. So that leads me, I am getting to your question about sulfites, but because the vines are so steep in most places, not always, but generally, they can't really use machines to do most of their labor. So most of the labor for German wines is hand done. So they actually go up there, they pick the grapes themselves. No machine can stay up at that whatever it's called, aspect or diagonal, whatever, angle. Thank you. Yeah, a machine cannot work at that 45-ish degree angle. So people are doing that labor manually, which means a lot of things. It means, for one, they're putting a lot more TLC or love and attention into their grape growing and their grape harvesting. They're really trying to make those grapes in the vineyards and not in the wineries. And it also means, because they're already doing that in a lot of ways, they also do a lot of other organic and biodynamic farming techniques. So what that means is, you all know what organic means, pretty much, probably, hopefully, if you ever bought like organic food.
In Germany, they call it bio. Okay, bio. Okay.
B-I-O.
Bio. Yeah. Biodynamic, which we can get into more in a different episode, but biodynamic is kind of a step further than organic. It's a little bit more integrated with the land and the moon cycles and the processes of, like, sometimes they'll have farms and animals and they don't add a bunch of stuff. Even the stuff that they're allowed to add with organic, they don't add a lot of.
And it makes sense because biodynamic was started by Rudolf Steiner, who is an Austrian, which we talked about. Austria is like mini Germany.
Yeah.
Like, although
honestly,
I have no idea. Austria could be bigger than Germany. I really should look at this map behind us. But anyway, so that makes sense why they would be like really a leader in biodynamics in winemaking.
Yes. So what that has to do with sulfites, to answer your question about sulfites, sulfites are actually a naturally occurring product on grapes, actually on all fruit and things that you would get that grow. It's in the air, it lands on the fruit, it exists just as part of the fruit growing. So there's never going to be anything that is sulfite free. Like you cannot make grapes and things sulfite free. What you can do is not add additional sulfites. I think we kind of maybe talked in an earlier episode.
No, that was an episode we didn't show the whole public.
We privately talked in an earlier episode about sulfites because a lot of times people think that people have an aversion to sulfites. A large part of that is because the U.S. government regulates the fact they don't actually regulate much about wine, and they don't actually make you put the ingredients. They don't actually make you include any of the chemicals or other things that you add, but they make you put the sulfite, whether or not you've added sulfites, onto your labels. So any wines coming into the U.S. have to say whether or not they have added sulfites. If you look at the actual amount of sulfites, so almost all wines have added sulfites. Seen a few of them with sulfite, no added sulfites. And never sulfite free, because at least I've never seen it, because sulfites are naturally occurring in nature on the fruit. That goes for anything. So if you look at like a comparison chart of where you get sulfites from, the majority of the time you're going to get massive amounts more. I think Wine Folly did a really nice job of showing a diagram of like how many sulfites or like how many parts per billion is in a thing of French fries, how many parts per billion is in like a Coca-Cola, how many parts per billion are in some dried apricots, how many parts per billion are in this glass of wine. And they basically showed that almost everything other than the wine had like exorbitant amounts of sulfites. Like if you eat dried fruit, you are most likely getting huge amounts of sulfites, versus wine, even with added sulfites, are pretty minimal.
But sulfites are, one, it's a natural occurring thing it's naturally occurring in the world.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we should be too afraid of it. Obviously, there are some wines where they add way too much sulfur and you can smell it. When you smell your wine and it smells like a burnt match, like that is like kind of like the sulfury smell. We're gonna get there. But so sulfites, it's actually it's one of those things that actually is the biggest thing to help preserve wine. Like even just a really minimal amount really helps preserve wine and makes it last. So shouldn't be afraid of it. A lot of people do say, "Oh, I get headaches from sulfites," and kind of the reason why you're probably associating your headaches with sulfites is because the wines that are like lower quality that we associate with a lot of sulfites, or where they have a lot of additives, are adding sugar. Like they're capitalizing, which is when they add sugar in order to up their alcohol percentage. Yeah. So they want higher alcohol. And so they're like, okay, we're going to add sugar to this wine. And they also have to like, so when you start adding things, you have to start adding more things because it's going to offset the balance. So it's like, they're going to have to add a lot more sulfur than like someone who produces naturally just to keep their wine stable. Yeah. And so what people are probably getting headaches from is all the sugar added and the heightened alcohol, but they're associating it with sulfites because the government makes wineries put if sulfites are added. So I think that is the misconception that I'd like to undo. But I also think that people who add a lot of sulfur are probably adding a lot of other things. Yeah, so when you're thinking, it's like, I don't want sulfites in my wine, but I understand that it helps preserve wine. I don't want a lot of sulfates in my wine. I want it to be as minimal as possible because they aren't doing all these other ways to intervene in what is being made.
Yeah, and I think that's the nice thing about German wines is that you may not have a sulfite-free bottle of German wine, but you're going to have a lot less additives as a general kind of stereotype. So there, of course, are mass-produced German wines as well, but that's a great question about the bottles. We decided not to get super into the bottles today because we want to do a whole bottle episode where we can talk to you about all the different bottle shapes. But yes, there are a lot. I don't know the exact reason, but I think it's
my guess would be, I mean, it's probably a marketing campaign.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was
gonna say too, like, I wonder if they're trying, because a lot of it's grown on blue slate, and I'm like, maybe that's why. But I think that I'm just like romanticizing that it's really just a marketing campaign.
Yeah, I think it's like Blue Nun was the one, maybe one of the ones who did it first. So now everybody thinks like, oh, we should do like some blue bottle. But I haven't seen a blue bottle of Riesling for a while. But I know they exist. So
well, now that we have kind of talked about sulfites, and let's talk about quality, because that is like something that I think goes hand in hand. And there is definitely a hierarchy of quality. Perfect. This lovely, lovely graph tells you all you need to know, and what you don't need to know, I'm about to tell you. Okay, so at the very bottom, let's start at the bottom and we'll move to up to the top. You're going to see that Landwein, which is going to be table wine. It's not really exported from Germany. It's kind of like if you are familiar with French wine, which people tend to, if they're familiar with exported wine, that's the one that they're most familiar with. It's like vin de paix, like what you would see in France, which is just table wine. The next step up is Qualitätswein, or QBA. So this is like a higher quality wine, but it didn't reach that ripeness level to get it into the predicate system. So remember how we talked earlier about how to read a label, and when it said certain things on it, it was like level of ripeness when it was picked. So that is kind of there. Qualitätswein also are going to be dry, like the higher quality dry wines. So then as you move up further, you're going to see Cabernet and Spätlese. So Cabernet wines, they're going to be even a higher ripeness. So it's just going up in ripeness. If you're like at home following along, Cabernet is going to be kind of the low end of the ripe part. Sometimes you'll find a Cabernet that is sweet. If you remember the Dr. Lucen one that we looked at, it had a Cabernet, and I could guess that it was sweet because the alcohol was pretty low. But Cabernet can actually not be sweet. Like we talked about, it only is indicative of ripeness level at picking.
What does that have to do? What does it taste like when it's more ripe?
So when it's riper, it has a lot to do with concentration. And so remember how Kaitlin was kind of talking a little bit earlier about young vines versus old vines, and how young vines tend to be like maybe a little waterier, not as deep, like flavors. That is going to be the same case with ripeness. So Cabernet is going to be kind of on the end, like the low end of the riper ones. So it can be sweet depending on in the winery how they, what they ferment to. So if they're fermenting to dry, it's not going to be sweet. It's just going to be a higher alcohol. And that's the same with Spätlese. Spätlese is going to be ripe, even riper than Cabernet, but it might not be sweet again. It could just be higher in alcohol because they fermented it dry. So they let the yeast eat all of the sugar. So there's no leftover sugar. And so it's just going to be more alcohol, but not sweet. Or they could have stopped the fermentation and left the sweetness in, because the predicate system is only indicative of how ripe it was when it was picked. And that is indicative of the quality. Yes. One more question. Another question. As many questions we want.
My question is...
Don't have a question. Just tell us. I'm sure, or maybe
I forgot what it was in the first place. I was gonna say, why do people?
Ruben.
I was gonna say, why would a winemaker choose to make it in one of these styles versus the other one?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna get there.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Perfect. So we're gonna get there. Can we pull up that triangle one more time? Okay. So the next one up is Auslese. So Auslese is gonna be even sweeter. Next one, Baron Auslese. Top one, Trockenbaron Auslese. So lots of things. So now let's pull up the other picture. Totally badass. I think that's what it stands for too.
Yeah.
Those are totally badass wines at the top. So, and also you can see as it gets kind of more towards the top, it's going to be less and less of the amount of wine that's being made in Germany. It's like, it's going to, it's hard to find a totally badass wine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to find a totally badass German wine, but to find a TBA, which is a Trockenbaron Auslese, it's a much smaller production.
And maybe more expensive.
Yes. let's talk about why. Maybe we could go to the next picture. So when a winemaker is choosing kind of what to make for their wine, I have these lovely pictures of kind of, you can see the different grapes. So the Cabernet and the Spätlese, you can kind of see there's a little bit of dried grapes in there, a little bit of like botrytis, brownish grapes, but they're mixed with regular grapes too. So it's like, it's not going to have so much sugar. It's not going to be so concentrated. Think about when you eat a grape at home or when you eat a raisin at home, which one's sweeter? The raisin. And it's because all of the liquid came out of it and it's just concentrated sugar. So as you can see, it's getting further and further to that kind of raisinated state. It's getting further and further to dried state. So if I had a vineyard and I was like, okay, you know what? I need to like pay for this land. I need to pay all my workers. I need to do all this. I'm going to pick a lot of my grapes at the beginning. So I'm going to make that Cabernet and Spätlese. But you know what? I'm going to leave some of the grapes on because I want to make an even better wine, or not better, but I want to make an even more concentrated wine. But I'm not sure if those grapes are going to make it without, what are some of the things that could cause them to not make it?
So what happens throughout the grape growing season is if you don't pick right when they're in that Spätlese Cabernet time,
or even before then,
or even sooner, you risk the grapes getting mold, you risk frost, you risk all kind of mildew, bugs.
And like hail and different things like affecting the grapes. So each time that you like, okay, so I picked my Cabernet, I picked my Spätlese because I'm hedging my bets. I'm like, that's going to probably pay my bills. But you know what? I love wine so much. I'm going to go to the next step. I'm going to leave it on a little longer and see if it'll make it. I'm going to make an Auslese. So then you like, let's just say you left a little quarter of your vineyard and you're like, okay, I'm going to leave these ones on, even though I picked all my other ones because I know I paid all my bills. And I'm going to make Auslese because I know it's worth more money and it's a better wine. So then you make it to that Auslese point. And so you're like, okay, you know what? Of this little quarter, I'm only going to pick half. I'm going to make half of that into an Auslese. But the next one I'm going to go to is a Bieren Auslese. So I'm going to leave those ones on a little longer. I'm going to hope they don't get mold. I'm going to hope that they don't get frost. I'm going to hope that they don't get like mildew. I'm going to hope that birds don't eat them. So then you get to Bieren Auslese. So you made it to Bieren Auslese. So now I want to go even further. I want to go to Trockenbeeren Auslese. And I'm just like, gonna just leave them on a little bit longer. So that's kind of like the risk that they take. And that's why they're much more expensive because it is a risky process. 2, because it's more concentrated. So you're getting this more kind of exciting wine. And 3, because it's getting less and less of how much, like if you think about how much can even be made of it, you're getting less and less. And then another one is called Eiswein, which is kind of like the last step after TBA. It's when the grapes freeze, but it freezes in this like perfect moment where you're going to take these little frozen berries and squeeze the sweet, sweet nectar nar-nar out of them and make this wonderful dessert wine. So that kind of gives you an idea of like the predicate system and why they're relating that to quality. And when you kind of get above that Cabernet, Spätlese, you're gonna move into sweet wine. So if you see those things, and even the Cabernet and Spätlese can be sweet wines, always look at the alcohol percentage.
Also, it makes it a really nice ageable wine if you get up into those higher levels. Those wines are just, I mean, think about squeezing a bunch of raisins to make a thing of wine. It is absurd. So yes, ice wine is, so good. But they're rarely made. So, you know what might most often probably happens is those people set aside those little tiny allotments for those, and then something goes wrong and they can't use them and they throw them away.
Yes.
So it's not like every year a winemaker can always make all those styles. It depends on so many other factors.
Okay, so let's talk about what we're drinking and what it's tasting like, because I feel like we just love Germany so much. We're probably going to go a little longer than usual. I'm sorry about that, everybody.
We also, it's probably us hanging out together.
It really is. Like, this never happens, so we just want it to last as long as possible.
Do you want to taste my wine?
Yes, I do. Please. I wish that we could pour it for everyone else watching, but I'll take part in this.
Well, she'll tell you if I'm lying to you.
I know. I told her today, I was like, ooh, now I can judge whether or not you're actually tasting what you're saying you're tasting.
As if I was just manufacturing it. I taste all the things I'm supposed to be tasting in here.
Interesting.
Okay, so I have had this wine before because I love this wine. One thing that's really interesting, we talked about it with Pinot Noir last week, is that the area that this is, particularly like this vineyard in the Rheinhessen, is latitudinally, I believe, but also the microclimate is similar to Burgundy. So if you remember, a red Burgundy is a Pinot Noir. This one's a Pinot Noir. So this one, it has like I love it because it has such an earthy, like when I smell it and taste it, it is like picking up a pile of dust or dirt with some cherries in it.
The interesting thing is I almost wouldn't be able to tell it was German because it's so earthy. Like, because it's just like earth.
Yeah.
One other like player that falls along that same latitudinal line is New York, like the Finger Lakes. So a lot of really cool Rieslings and Pinots are coming out of that area because it falls along the same line as Germany.
Yeah, I would love for us to do a kind of domestic or a Riesling episode or something where we can talk about it. But you probably
and also send us all the episode ideas you have because we're not that great.
Yeah,
we need your ideas. We know that you are creative and you have questions about wine and we want to answer them. So tell us what we should do our episodes on.
Okay, what else do you smell in this, or what are you tasting it?
Oh. It's not that much fruit.
Yeah,
like it's not very fruity.
It's not super fruity. I mean, I put this in the fridge for I took it out after about 30 minutes, so it had a little chill in it, which is probably mostly gone now. But yeah, I feel like it's super earthy, super tart.
Yeah, that acid is. I probably would. Because the acid's so high, maybe I would say Germany. If I were to guess.
It is like a Burgundy in German clothing.
Yes.
Or something like that.
A Frenchman in German clothing.
Yeah, something like that. I love it. It's like I could eat, I don't know. It's just wonderful. So
there you go.
Oh yes, it's the terroir. But you go around, I was thinking the other day, there's a few wines I was smelling that just smelled like dust or dirt. And it's just such an interesting characteristic because it's not something I would tell my table if I was serving a table. Like, oh, this is a great wine. It smells like dirt, but it is a quality. And when you're smelling it, you can pick it up on.
I think it kind of mushroom a little on, which is I'm like very like.
You're into it.
I'm in.
Okay, what about yours?
Okay, so let me pour you some of mine.
Ooh. I'm sitting on a couch that's very squeaky, and I feel like it's made fart sounds a bunch of times.
She's just been farting this whole episode. Yes, thank you, Alan. Okay,
like more mayo on a hot day.
I know. Okay, I think like smell it. Tell me. Fermented pineapple is like the first thing that comes to my nose. Like I just like.
Wow, I wouldn't have picked up Riesling on this. I would have thought like almost like Sauvignon Blanc, more like a tropical. Okay.
I mean, Riesling can have that tropical. I think once you taste it, then you'd be like, oh, Riesling, because the acid is so high.
So Riesling is cool because it has like a full. It's like a really sharp flavor, but it has like a full weightedness in your mouth. So this one is like coating my mouth.
Oh, but then it's like sucking on a lime and a rock at the same time. Is how I feel when I'm tasting this. It's so good. I like. Whew. So we were talking a little bit about earlier how like with it being grown in a cold climate, all the German wines that, it has that laser sharp acidity, which also makes German wines great for food.
Yeah.
Like you should have like this. I want to have with, I want to have it with duck liver toast with fermented pineapples.
I feel like mine should be with duck liver toast.
Well, maybe they both can be. Okay, so then let's talk about what you want to have yours with then. Other than duck liver toast.
I feel so like, whoa, fancy. 2 glasses. When I think of it's as I think of Pinot Noir and I think of German Pinot Noirs and I think of things that are like gamey, not super gamey like big meats like lamb or anything, not like that. I think of like duck and fowl and pâtés, and I just always think about pâtés actually. So whatever the wine is, I'm generally wanting
pâtés are just on your mind. So whatever wine you're drinking.
But pâté has some of that earth characteristics. Like when you actually eat a pâté, you're like, there's a lot of earth to it.
Like transparency, we had pâté the other night.
Of course we had pâté the other night.
Because it's always on her mind.
It's always on my mind.
Oh, and I'm not that fancy here. I literally have like 1 Burgundy glass, 1 Riesling glass, and then a bunch of stemless glasses. Just in case you think we're fancy here, we're not. This is the irreverent guide. And now when I have a guest, I'm like, okay, well, who gets which glass.
She's like, these are my nice glasses, and then these are my stemless glasses. So I was like, perfect. That's what we're doing here. So, what do you want to eat with it? I already said it last week, but I feel like it could go with like a mushroom risotto or something like that really well.
I mean, I feel like I said it last week because we talked about Pinot Noir last week, but like duck and with a cherry sauce.
Oh yeah, anything cherry. It's like so cranberry, cranberry cherry notes. What do you want with yours?
Okay. Well, I told you.
Oh,
so
sorry.
Oh wait, duck for everything. Amen. Oh my gosh. Actually, Alyssa Lee reminds me that I want to have this with Peking duck and a hoisin sauce.
Also, it's funny because sometimes when Britt's giving her food recommendations, she's like so fancy, and I'm like, gosh, does she really like eat these things all the time? And then I came to her house, and we literally had homemade pho for dinner last night. And then what did we have before that? We had like 4 things in a row that I was like,
she was like, oh my gosh, you're really fancy. And I'm like, I just like to make food.
Yeah, I was like, who just whips up like a homemade pho on like a fucking Wednesday night?
I know.
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. I'll tell you, it was in the Instant Pot, so it only took 30 minutes, but I also live by Berkeley Bowl, which let me tell you.
Don't get started on Berkeley Bowl.
I can't. I like wax poetic about Berkeley Bowl
all the time. You don't have time for that.
Okay, one thing though, real quick. Kaitlin came and visited me, and her partner called her and was like, so have you gone to Britt's favorite grocery store yet? Like, he literally knows how much I love this grocery store.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go back to the wine.
It's pretty good.
Just talk about the wine.
Yeah. Nope.
I mean,
man, this is such a strange Riesling to me.
Duck liver toast is what I want with it. Like, I feel so dumb. Like, not dumb, but like, I used to work at a restaurant that had duck liver toast, and that's what I want. Okay.
Oh,
there you go.
It's so great. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's delicious.
What do you want with this one?
What do I want with this one? I feel like I could hold up to like some sort of like citrus salad, which is really weird. I was thinking like a grapefruit.
I was thinking maybe oysters too. I could get down with some oysters in this wine.
Are you gonna whip up some oysters for us tonight?
Well, I did learn how to shuck them recently, and that was a goal of mine. And so now I know how to shuck oysters. So
prove it.
I will, but we don't have them, so I'll get them tomorrow, and we'll prove it tomorrow.
So what do you want to listen to? With
my gosh! Well, I want to listen to Kraftwerk. Maybe you've heard of this German band. They do. Perfectly.
Sie ist geworden, sie sieht gut aus. Ich nehme sie heute gerne mit zu mir nach Haus. Sie wird so kühl, als sie kommt nie.
So I had a little help choosing this song choice, but it seems appropriate. We've got a song called Heroes, a little David Bowie for you.
And Pinot Noir is my hero.
So,
Kraftwerk, apparently. Kraftwerk is the one with this one too. It sounds like it's when they talk about what was
I don't know. You tell me.
I remember standing above the wall when they shot above our heads, but we kissed like nothing would fall. And this is a revolutionary one. Oh yes. Okay. So
revolutionary wine for revolutionary song.
We want to know what you're drinking with your wine too.
Yes.
Like, so tell us, please.
We want to know what you're drinking with your wine.
What you're drinking with your wine. Because I'm drinking this with my wine. I'm drinking this wine with this one. I want to know what you're listening to. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, ich lieben. Like, ich lieb me, ja. Ich lieb dich, ja. Okay.
You better believe we've been listening to that for like days on end.
Oh, we have. We love each other, and we love each other in German, which then you know it's real.
It's a real
okay.
thing.
So besides this, yeah. Okay, besides this, we're going to talk about what's happening, what's coming up.
Yes. So if you're all German wined out, let's move on to next week. So a little announcement. Next week is this gal's birthday on Thursday. So
I'm turning 21, so don't tell anyone we've been doing these episodes. I feel like, it was like 3 episodes where I've been drinking. So now it's it's above board.
Yeah. So now that she's 21, we can drink together more publicly.
Thank God. So tell all your friends so they can come to our public shows. These wouldn't have been private, just so everybody knows who's been watching.
Well, we were discussing before, and I was like, Britt, what do you want all of our wine cast to bring for your birthday as gifts for you?
In lieu of presents, please bring a friend. That is what we ask. So
okay, so we decided it was on Britt's birthday. We were going to make it Britt's choice. So Britt, what's your choice?
Okay, so some of you who are tuning in who are related to me may know that my mother is a Bruno, and the Brunos come from a little small town called Sicily. You know what else comes from Sicily? The mafia. So we're going to do a mafia wine episode, which is going to focus on Southern Italian wines. So
don't worry, we are going to help you find
Oh my gosh,
them.
we're going to help you right now, and we're going to help everybody else who didn't tune into this episode live. But I also, in case you're wondering, just took a big test on Southern Italian wine, and let me tell you, Southern Italy is...
Yes, don't be intimidated.
Because we're going to unpack it here for you. But some wines that you can look for when you're thinking about Southern Italy, maybe you've heard of something called Sangiovese. I bet you have. Sagrantino is going to be a Southern Italian
Never heard of that one.
Perfect. Fiano, if you're looking for a white one, you're like, we talked about mayonnaise in the summer. I don't want red wine. I want white wine. Fiano and Falangina. Some weird ones in case you're out there seeing them, which I'm going to bring a weird one because I'm a weird one. If you're thinking like literally Sicily, I'm going to bring a Norello Mescalese.
Okay.
How do you even spell that? Look on our Instagram because we're going to have a list so that you can follow along. So Norello Mescalese, Catarratto, lots of things, but ones that you'll probably see like easily are going to be like the Sangiovese, Fiano, Falangina.
We went to the grocery store to do a little research.
Montepulciano.
Oh yeah, Montepulciano. That's a good one. We went to the grocery store because I was pumping the brakes on Britt over here, being like, "Well, I don't know." She
is always pumping the brakes on me. I'm just gonna say this because I'm like, no, our listeners can take it, and she's like, no, they can't.
No, it's not that you can't take it, but I needed to know that they were easy to find. So I was like, okay, let's figure out. We'll put together a guide. We'll tell them where to buy, and we'll tell them where to go. But first, let's go to the grocery store. Let's see what they have on the shelf for Southern Italy. And you know what? We found a handful of them at the Berkeley. No, it
wasn't at Berkeley Bowl. It wasn't at my favorite grocery store.
So we believe in you. We think you can find them. Look for some Southern Italian. Look at our Instagram.
Plenty. I mean, that's more central, but we're letting you. Yeah. And I mean, all wines are welcome here. Even if you can't find a Southern Italian wine, still participate. Find anything like, oh, this looks like it's in a...
Also, you might be wondering why we're not just covering Italy in one episode. And the reason is Italy is potentially the most complicated country to cover as far as wine goes because there are like 2,000 plus indigenous grape varieties.
Oh my God. My test, I maybe failed, but who knows?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed it didn't. But oh my gosh. It's
so much.
Actually, my professor says this funny joke. Of all of his Italy wine classes, he says, "You want to know what the difference between heaven and hell is? In heaven, I'm gonna mess it up.
I know.
I'm sorry. I didn't even practice this. In heaven, the police officers are English, the mechanics are German, the lovers are Italian, the cooks are French, and it's all organized by the Swiss." In hell, the police officers are German. The cooks are English. The lovers are Swiss. The mechanics are French. And it's all organized by the Italians. So if you want to know what hell is like, tune into next week's episode because we're going to talk about how it's all complicated. It's all complicated. Yes.
Yes. So Italy's too complicated. We're gonna do Northern Italy at some point. with
Actually,
some
yeah,
other
that's why we're
varieties.
splitting up, but we're gonna make it not complicated. So tune in
Yes.
so you can uncomplicate Italy.
So same time,
Same
next
place
week.
on your couch,
Yes.
in front of your computer,
on your couch with your bottle
and your friend.
Yes.
Remember, because that's the present you're bringing me for my birthday.
Follow us on Instagram. Reach out if you need help.
Our Instagram. Fine. Yes. Can you like 10 minutes over? Are you
Almost like done.
I know. Corey's like, no more. Stop.
We're all night.
Oh my gosh, I feel like Grammys are not Grammys like the Golden Globes where they start playing the music so you see the stage. That is what just happened.
We're on the stage. Take our wines. Take our wines with us. Take my wines. I like that.
Me too.
Oh, Corey. That was good though. It was tough.